Hello, my dear friends. It's a big pleasure to be here talking to you, friends of Chico Xavier, like all of us that are in search, according to our possibilities, to practice the teachings of Jesus that the Spiritist doctrine explains to us. It's a pleasure to be in this world meeting of Jesus Friends with Chico Xavier and his legacy. This is a Chico's Friends meeting under the aegis of Jesus. I come originally from Rio de Janeiro, but I've been living for many years in the city of Torres in Rio Grande do Sul, where I talk to you from. Here in Torres, we attend the Spiritist group Caminho da Luz. We've been doing that for many years. And we have the goal to study the works of Chico Xavier and his contributions to his legacy. So I was invited to talk about Chico Xavier and the love for nature. Geraldinho Lemos, our friend who invited me, I believe he took into consideration the fact that I am an agronomer, and as such, I dedicate my life to agroecology, which is it's an attempt to mix the agronomic sciences with the environmental sciences. I have a kinship, an affinity with these subjects, so I believe that's why I was invited to speak about Chico and the love for nature. Let me take this opportunity to tell you a personal story. My parents have a very beautiful story about the way they met Chico, but I cannot tell you in details now. But they used to go to Uberaba once a month during the 70s, along the 80s, in the beginning of the 90s. And then Chico's health started to get worse, and my parents' presence there diminished. But my brothers and I had many opportunities to go there. We used to call it the big weekend to spend in the company, or in the blessed company of Chico. So here I am, about 17 years old, finishing high school, and I had to choose what I was going to study at university. And my choice was agronomy at the Federal University of Viçosa, which is about 6-7 hours from Niterói. And my mother was touched about that. I was going to be the first son to leave home, to live at university with colleagues. She was really worried about it. And she used to share all her worries with Chico. So we went to Uberaba, as we used to joke. Chico's word was as strong as jurisprudence. So there we were, and she asked, Chico, Laércio wants to go to Viçosa, he's so young. And she could say, Viçosa is so beautiful. And he started telling us stories in his wanderings in the state of Minas Gerais, when he worked as a scrivener for the Ministry of Agriculture. He used to take notes about animals. And the fact is he traveled a lot to see cattle raising exhibitions, etc. And then my mother would go back to this subject, but he's so young. And Chico didn't say anything. He would speak about Viçosa. And my mother didn't get what she wanted, a kind of advice from Chico to me so that I couldn't go far away from home. And I am an agronomer, and I dedicate to the subject the environment and sustainability till today. So I had other opportunities to talk to Chico because I was interested in studying the environment. I was an adolescent, so I couldn't go deeply in this subject. But we talked, and the relationship of Chico Xavier with nature has always been very strong, and I knew that. After this introduction, I want to speak during our conversation today the elements that I notice related to Chico and nature. The first one is the relationship Chico Xavier had with nature as a whole. I think it's very significant that his first meeting with Emmanuel, his colleague, of his work colleague, his mentor, took place in a natural environment, at the Capão Dike. That happened in a natural environment. There is something related to the beginning of his assignment as a medium. Maybe it could be the visions of his mother or his mediunic communications when he was still a child, or when he was 17 years old when he joined the Spiritist doctrine. But it was with Emmanuel, the first meeting where they talked about his assignment for the following years. And that also reminds me of that page, if I'm not mistaken, it's from the book Boa Nova, Jesus in Samaria, where there is, when Jesus met a woman at the well. It's a beautiful passage of that book. They start a very beautiful dialogue. If you haven't read Boa Nova, actually, according to Chico, it's the book that he had on his bedside. But in this chapter of Jesus and the woman, he says that time would come when people would worship the Father neither on the mountain nor in Jerusalem, but in nature. God is a spirit, and as such, it has to be worshipped. So I don't know if you agree with me, but this meeting with Emmanuel at the Capão Dike with Chico Xavier in a natural environment has something to do with the beginning of his assignment as a medium, and has to do with Jesus in Samaria. As Jesus says, God is a spirit, the Father is a spirit, and as such it has to be worshipped. I also consider that all those decades that Chico used to pray at home by the avocado tree. There is a book by Carlos Bacelli by the shade of the avocado tree, where the subject was to be in nature. Chico was in nature, surrounded by people in need, and Chico used to read and talk to people about it. And by the shade of the avocado tree, Chico left us many, many lessons. But especially this one, that we have to remember always to worship God in the environment that reflects the wisdom and the beauty of the doctrine. And that where also he confirmed his commitment with his attention to people in need. I'm just giving you an example for the people that used to see Chico Xavier and know that he used to go to Peirópolis to pray in a natural environment. And we would pray together, and Chico would get messages in this natural environment. This is to say that whenever possible, Chico was in search of this contact with nature. So this would be a first dimension or dimension of Chico's relationship with nature. I told you I was going to speak about 3 levels, 3 dimensions. The second one has to do with the love that Chico had for the animals. There are several stories. The Carlos Bacelli that I've just mentioned has another book called something like Chico and the Animals, Chico Xavier and the Animals. Chico had many stories with cats and dogs. And there is that story where he helped a little kitten and asked somebody to prepare chicken, explaining to this person that the being that was going to get it needed a very good one, a very well prepared. But the person didn't know that it was for the little kitten. In Pedro Leopoldo, he sees a big dog in his house, a friend's dog, and he negotiated with the dog, "Please don't bite me. I promise that I'll go to your place and I'll give you all the meat that I have in the refrigerator." So he gets home and opens the refrigerator, gets all the meat, and give it to the dog. And Chico thanked the dog for not having beaten him. So this is another story of the book Chico de Francisco, where Chico Xavier is the main character, with a lot of stories of Chico with the animals. Like another story about the ants that were eating his rose bushes, that Chico was crazed for them. And people were thinking about the formicide, to use formicide to kill the ants. But Chico wrote a manifest, and for 3 days he would read the manifest, telling them that they were going to die if they remained there, but they had to stop eating the rosebuds. It seems that most of the ants obeyed and left. Some of them remained there, and somebody asked him, "How about the ones that didn't leave?" And Chico said, "Oh, those ones are going to die." But it's very interesting. I'm not going into this now, but our Buddhist brothers, they walk with their heads down in order not to kill the ants. But the fact is that Chico had this love for animals. And this takes me to a place that has to do with care. It's such an important element of the universe because it's the expression of love. If you love, you take care. We love and we care. All of us have somebody to take care of. It's the question 888 in the Spirit's book. St. Vincent de Paul used to say, the answer is long. It's a sign, answer, and as you know, always brings a more deep knowledge. But St. Vincent of Paul replies that all the spirits, you and me, we are situated in a plane of life that we are, somebody is taking care of us, and we help somebody. All of us are being taken care of somebody, and we all take care of somebody. In question 636b, there is another interesting information that has to do with what we are talking about care. It's the care that Chico had with his rosebuds, with the animals, the care he had with the ants, even. And this 636b question has a relation with this. So there is that in this universal trinity that we spiritists recognize, that the Spirit of Truth teaches, and that's why that Luke also notices it, is that God does not act on matter. God acts through the hands of Paul. It's interesting how we notice that, because God needs us to act on matter. And that's why we are, along with divinity, we are God. We can do much more than we think we can. So because God does not act on matter, the care happens through our hands. The care that God would like to have with His work, with His creation, we are the ones to perform it, to do it. The spirits act on matter, not God. So our hands need to do, our hands need to be like Paul's hands. So the word that we are going to use is love, more than anything. And the love that Chico had for the animals, for the plants, was expressed by his hands, what he did for the animals and the plants. It's like the chicken for the little kitten, and the meat for the dog, and the manifest for the ants. Look at how interesting there is. Chico left us a tip. Let's use our hands according to the divine will. May God use our hands according to His wishes. Of course, according to our possibilities. But life on a daily basis offers us numerous possibilities to help. At home, we have opportunities. Outside in the streets, we have opportunities. It can be a stray dog. It can be to help somebody to cross the street. We can create this image. I would like to help that lady crossing the street. God cannot do it, but we can do it with our hands. Sometimes I find myself thinking when Peter denies Jesus 3 times, I think about the situations and the moment that we deny to take care of somebody or something. We are denying Jesus too. If you have a chance to save a little kitten or help somebody by giving the best of us, like the best chicken, the best meat to somebody, it's a way to take the opportunity to do it. The closest expression of God is love, is care. And if you don't do it, we are denying Jesus. How many times have we done that every day? Like Peter denied Jesus for 3 times. So this is about the relationship Xavier had with nature and how our hands can be at the service of the divine. Of course, Chico took care of people too. See if you agree with me. Chico took care of what he was supposed to care. I think sometimes, am I taking care of what I am supposed to? Chico did it. We can imagine, Jesus takes care of our planet. Maybe in our spiritist movement, people say, maybe another planet too. And an explanation that Emmanuel tells us in the book On the Way to the Light, A Caminho da Luz, Jesus is the governor of our planet. And when I take care of my plants in the backyard, I think God takes care of the planet. Each of us will take care of what we are supposed to according to our possibilities. I have my backyard, my little dog, Jesus with the planet, and Chico Xavier in the between that took care of his work, of a lot of people, his over 500 books he wrote as a medium. I can almost tell you that the care that Chico had with us was also an expression of his care to the animals. Because Chico used to say that, like the angels take care of us, we take care of the animals. So our emotions, the way that we behave daily, the way that we react to the impulses that the earth brings to us, is sometimes much closer to the animals than to the angels. If you get offended, please ignore what I'm saying. But the ways that we react places us much closer to matter than to the spirit, much closer to animals than to the angels. So the question 888 that St. Vincent de Paul says that we are all being taken care of by somebody and we all take care of somebody, teaches us the need to do that. So that was the second dimension of Chico with nature. It was the care that he taught us. And we have to be very aware of that. Like to get to the end of the day, like St. Augustine suggested us to do, is to review our day and reflect. What have I done today? How much time have I used today to take care of somebody? If I spent the whole day without doing it, something is out of the axis. We need to do that. And this is one of the things that we learned with Chico Xavier. And I'm taking the care for the animals as an example, because Chico's love would go beyond, much beyond the animals. His capacity to love, it was something that sometimes I cannot still understand it. So my mother, Dona Elenir, my mother, every day when I was living in Viçosa, then I lived in some other places, but she, while she was alive and even maybe after that, although I don't know for sure, but my mother used to ask me every day, what have you put in your basket today? It was the basket of good actions. Is your basket full or empty? And when I remember that, I remember about the care. Have you answered to the calls you had? I don't know if you agree, but there is a good reflection. Am I taking care of what I'm supposed to? Am I going to take care of myself first and then take care of somebody else? No, I will disagree, because when I take care of somebody, I will take care of myself as I take care of somebody. So now we are getting to the end, and I want to talk about the other level. We've talked about his relation with nature in a whole. When we talked about Jesus and the woman at the well in Samaria, we have talked about the love that Chico had for animals, and with the stories that we talked. So Chico is teaching what the doctrine teaches us, that the ones that we act on matter and not God, and we are here to act on matter for God. The third element, the third level, has to do with simplicity. What has to do with the love for nature? You know that for the past 50, 60 years, scientists started to awake for what we call an environmental crisis. Our planet needs to be cared of. This is common sense. We need to take care of our house. Ecology means the study of the house. It's interesting, a parenthesis. The word ecology has its origin by a German scientist called Haeckel in 1866, after the Spirit's book. Because in the Spirit's book, you can find very deep notions on ecology. So the Spirit's book brings us notions of what ecology is. And I would like to read one another question from the Spirit's book for you. So because of this environmental crisis, nature is changing, a lot of pollution, rivers are contaminated, we have areas that are not productive anymore, there is a big loss of biodiversity for different reasons. So this is we can understand that as an environmental crisis. So after many years of studies, scientists identified a crucial problem because this has a close relation with the Spiritist doctrine and with Chico. So the environmentalists, they got to the conclusion that the biggest problem that we have is consumption, because we consume beyond the capacity the planet has to produce. I'm not going deeply into this, but this is just a brief introduction of what I want to talk on this third dimension, the third level of Chico's love for nature. When I produce a lot, more than I should, I am increasing the capacity of the planet to produce. When I have a desk made of wood, or the wardrobe, the shelf behind me, and all the materials that I use on my cell phone and my car, I extract from nature. So if I take too much, if there is excess of consumption, brings to an extrapolation of what the Earth is able to produce. So I'm sorry about this brief introduction, so that I can read the Spirit's book, because I want to show you how that was already in the Spirit's book. More or less 100 years later, the scientists got to the conclusion of what it was in the Spirit's book. In question 705, chapter 4, the conservation law, it's inside the moral laws on the third part. The question is, why does the planet not always produce enough to offer humanity what is needed? And the Spirit answers, the answer is long, but I'm going to read only one sentence. The Earth would produce always the necessary if humanity was satisfied with only the necessary. And the Spirit of Truth says, yes, it does produce, but humanity is not happy with what is necessary only. We are talking about Chico Xavier. You all know about how simple he is, or he was. There is a movement in the United States called Simple Life. It's an ecologist movement. Chico used to say, if you lose simplicity, you lose the address of peace. If you lose simplicity, you lose the address of peace. And our lives have been far away from the simple life. I understand that peace is the best synonym of happiness. The Spirit's book said that it's not possible for us to be completely happy on earth, but we are always trying to catch up. But for me, what is closest to peace is happiness. And Chico says, if you lose simplicity, you lose the address of peace, and I adapt Chico's sentence. If you lose simplicity, you lose the address of peace. And I consider that peace is like a sister. Simplicity is a sister of happiness. So the question from Spirit's book is, why does the planet not always produce enough? But the Spirit of Truth says, if humanity were happy with it. But there is another sentence that Chico used to have that it is also very interesting. When we start spreading butter on bread, we start losing perception between what is necessary and what is superfluous, like the hiding face, the WhatsApp emoji. So who among us does not? Chico said, when we start spreading butter on bread, we start losing perception between necessary and superfluous. This is actually a sub-item of chapter 6, the conservation law, that Kardec organized 3 questions, to be precise, about it. And one of the questions, it's question 715, is, how shall humanity know the limit of what is necessary? The reasonable person knows by intuition. And just one more question, just to wrap up our conversation. It's question 717. Well, what should we think about the ones that take over the planet goods to get the superfluous, even if it causes losses to the needy ones? The answer is, they don't know God's laws, and they will respond for what they do with other people. Chico said, when we spread butter on bread, we lose the notion of what we really need. And the Spirit of Truth said, if the one that uses the superfluous will be responsible to respond for what is taken care from other people. So those all that we talked about are examples of the relationship between Chico and nature. He refused as much as he could all the gifts that he got. He got them and he passed them along. Chico always had something to give. I had a T-shirt that Chico gave to me and that I had for 20 years, but he didn't retain anything that he got as a gift. It could be a watch, it could be a T-shirt, but he would give it away. It could be a pen. I remember, before we finish, I'll tell you, we used to go to Uberaba, and we always took something to give it to him. A pen, something, anything, a T-shirt. And my mother noticed that he would pass it along, whatever we took. So we started to think, what could he retain? And they found out, my parents found out, that Chico liked candies, some sweets. But that was not exactly what he wanted. He preferred to have something that helped him in his social work. So I don't know how many times I went to the post office to buy stamps, sheets of stamps, because we gave it to him. They were very useful to Chico. Chico could use the stamps in the letters, in the messages that he sent out. not only the ones that he got from the print shop, but also for people that wrote to him in Spiritist centers all over Brazil. He had actually a place in his house that he called post office. It was an office. So this is to close the parenthesis, just to say that Chico would pass along all the gifts that he got, because he was a friend of simplicity, and his love for nature could also be expressed by his simple living. So the expression of our love for nature has to be simplicity. Nature requires that from us. And it's very important that we have a simple living. You know that the symbol of simplicity in the Christian universe is St. Francis of Assisi. And so is Chico as an example of us. I'm going to stop speaking and thank once more for the opportunity to be here. So I thank you all very much. Remember the three dimensions that we talked about that have to do with the relationship Chico had with nature, which was very loving. The first one is to worship God in spirit, in communion with nature. It could be at the Capão Dike or in any other place. The trips he took to Peirópolis to pray with the people outside in nature. The other was the love for animals and our need to care. We have to care of what we are supposed to care. We all have somebody to take care of us, and we all have somebody that we should take care of. And also to have a simple life, a simple living, which the planet requires from us. And we need to adopt a simple life. And this is a wonderful example that Chico left to us. It was the example of his simple life, and that he worshipped God in nature, and that we should live as simple as possible. So once more, I thank you for the opportunity. May Jesus bless us, and we take advantage of this conversation during the World Meeting of Jesus Friends and Chico Xavier and his legacy, so that we can get closer to Chico and Jesus, to be able to accomplish the tasks that we are supposed to. God be with you all, and a big hug to all of you.